that the collective bargaining agreement between the Sheriff's Office, the DSABC, and Bexar County was actually voted on by the members of the DSABC, essentially the deputies of the Bexar County Sheriff's Office, and it passed overwhelmingly. I'm going to give you some of the high points that we know of that are new changes to that collective bargaining agreement. I mean, right off the bat, it's pretty safe to say that this is going to revolutionize the way disciplinary cases are handled within the Sheriff's Office. Most notably, and I'll go into details, most notably among these things is the pay raise, pretty substantial pay raise that is going to deputies over the course of the life of the contract. We'll be using that for our recruiting purposes. Starting almost immediately, we'll be doing that. But I also did want to go into some of the changes that were made with regard to the disciplinary process. So I'll go into a little bit more into detail on the percentages that are going to be seen on the pay raises. But for the first time that I know of in the history of the Sheriff's Office, we're going to see a Citizens Advisory Action Board as part of our disciplinary process. There will actually be a panel made up of citizens appointed by commissioners and Judge Wolf that are going to have the opportunity to hear certain disciplinary cases. This Advisory Action Board will then provide an advisory opinion to me before I render a decision on discipline. Now, it's important to note that that opinion is advisory in nature, and so I can depart from it, either higher or lower, or I can take the advice that's given to me as we go about implementing discipline during our process. The other notable change that's been made is that the arbitration stage, the arbitration clause in our contract is now going away. Now it's going to be replaced by something else that we feel works a little bit better. After I initiate discipline, after I impose discipline on a deputy, they then have the ability to appeal that discipline to the Civil Service Board, which we already have a Civil Service Board, but that Civil Service Board is being expanded. It'll go from 3 members to a total of 7 members. Now those again are also citizens that are appointed by myself, by the DA's office, but also by the commissioners and judge. They'll have the opportunity to appoint members of the Civil Service Board, and so that will be who discipline is appealed to in the event that a deputy does not agree with the discipline imposed by myself. And so while it may seem that with arbitration going away that would leave deputies without any recourse, that's actually not the case. Basically what we're doing in essence is we are localizing control of that disciplinary appeals process. In other words, instead of an out-of-state arbitrator that doesn't live in Bexar County coming in and making with the ability to overrule discipline, this is actually going to be citizens ruling on whether to overrule discipline or affirm it. To us, it just seems like a much better fit. Certainly, giving our citizens more of an input into the disciplinary process seems like a better way to go. So, any questions on the disciplinary part of the citizens of the CBA?
They be hearing every possible discipline case, or are you only going to refer some of them to you? What is the actual process for, how those reviews get started?
Sure. Well, they won't be hearing every case. Certainly there's some cases that we won't need the Citizens Advisory Board for. They're going to basically hear cases that I have the ability to refer a case to them. The complainant in a case has the ability to ask the Citizens Advisory Board to look into it, or the respondent deputy. But certainly cases like rudeness complaints, things of that nature, really won't ever, we won't have to burden the Citizens Advisory Board. It's just going to be some of the more formalized cases that may go through internal affairs. Something of a little bit more of an emergent, I wouldn't say emergent, but a little bit more of a severe type complaint versus something like a rudeness complaint or tardiness to work, things of that nature. Those will still be handled by the deputy's chain of command.
Will they be reviewing use of force incidents, such as if there's a deputy involved shooting?
Yes, they will be.
Is that going to be the new review process, or is that in addition to the program that you have with DAs?
That'll be in addition to what we're already doing, Garrett. We already have the internal affairs that looks over uses of force. Our public integrity unit looks at uses of force. Of course, the DA's office does whatever it is that they do. We certainly wouldn't try to infringe upon anything that they already have in place. This is an extra set of eyes, if you will, albeit through a different lens, being that they're civilians. Now, with that being said, I'm used to working under this system of a civilian advisory action board. As you all know, I was a member of the San Antonio Police Department, where they've successfully run a citizens advisory action board for going on 30 years probably, quite successfully. So I'm used to working within that system. I have a lot of faith in that system. And so, but one of the big things that it hinges upon is adequately training those civilians on language, what to look for, things of that nature. But my understanding is we'll be impaneling these folks very, very shortly and getting them started on the training that's going to be required of them to learn this job of serving on the Civilian Advisory Action Board.
So will you be deciding which use of force cases they review, or is that going to be determined if someone involved in that shooting or a family member puts a complaint forward? How is that going to end up being reviewed by them?
Well, as I mentioned, we will run the majority of major use of force cases. I guess anything where there's serious bodily injury. But as I mentioned, there's several parties in the case that could ask the board to take a look at cases, and it could be in any case. It could be the complainant in the case, the respondent deputy, or myself. So any one of those three parties could ask the Civilian Advisory Action Board to weigh in on a case.
Hey, Sheriff, it's Mike with WOAI News. Can you tell me about the makeup of the Citizen Advisory Board? Who will be part of this, and the importance of having different voices on that Citizen Advisory Board? Sure.
The Citizens Advisory Board will be impaneled by the Commissioner's Court. I will not be impaneling. We just felt that was kind of a conflict of interest to have me impaneling them, and so they will tell us who is actually on the panel. And I don't know what the selection process will be or how they'll go about picking these folks, other than Commissioner's Court will be making the announcement very soon, and then they'll be impaneling, and then that'll be who serves as the Civilian Advisory Action Board.
Do you think that's important to have different voices on that board to give it legitimacy?
Oh, absolutely. I think that we need a good range of diversity on the board. Typically some of the more successful boards that I've seen, again, back to my days at the San Antonio Police Department, is when you have folks on there from a wide range of professions. Very, very helpful when you can get somebody with a medical background on the board. Educators do really well with it. Attorneys always do really well with it. Really, there's really nobody that I could say we wouldn't want on this board. But it's going to come down to how often are they reselected? Are they all going to be in the room at one time, or do we just have to have a quorum? I think those are all things that still have to be decided.
Sheriff, can you talk about the elimination of the arbitration process and the Civil Service Commission process? How is that going to tie in with the Citizens Advisory Board that you have in place? Like, which one is?
Sure. So,
how does it work?
Okay, so I guess it's a three-step process, if you will. The Citizens Advisory Board will listen to the case. They will have the opportunity to review all of the evidence in association with the case. They will then render an opinion to me with that's advisory in nature. I can then depart from it upwards or downwards. Quite frankly, I can say, well, I think they got it wrong. I don't think that what they're recommending is strong enough. Or vice versa, I could say, well, I think that's maybe too harsh. I'd like to depart downward from it. Or I can take their advice and go exactly as with the advice that's in front of me. Ultimately, it's my decision to make. Now, with that being said, just as it is right now, should a deputy disagree with my discipline, the way it is now, they can take it to the Civil Service Board as it is. That'll still be in place. They can take it to civil. Let me back up a bit. They can take it to civil service or to arbitration, the way it is now. Obviously, with arbitration going away, that's no longer an option. Just the Civil Service Board is the option to review discipline cases. The difference now being that Civil Service Board is going to be 7 people instead of 3. The commissioners and judge will now have the opportunity to appoint people to that Civil Service Board as well. And again, I wouldn't be able to go into how that selection process is done, but suffice it to say the commissioners will be the ones appointing those folks.
So much like we're receiving an arbitrator with the cases in the San Antonio Police Department, can an officer can get their job back as an arbitrator rather than overturn the chief's decision. That's no longer going to be the case with the sheriff's office. Is that correct?
Correct. That process is not going to be in place anymore. And I think one of the big criticisms of the arbitration process has been that you've got an arbitrator that most of the time doesn't live in the state, rendering a decision that basically they don't have to live with the consequences of allowing somebody to keep a job in law enforcement locally that maybe doesn't need to be working in law enforcement. And so I think that this process where the stakeholders that are calling the shots on these things live here locally. They're familiar with our local customs. They're familiar with our local language, geography, and obviously they've got to live with the consequences of keeping somebody in a profession that maybe doesn't need to be anymore. So I think it gives a lot of that the control over that process, keeps it local.
So in what capacity would an officer, or should rather a deputy that is terminated, be able to get their job back? Because we see that so often, people that law enforcement officers that people believe may have should lost their job get reinstated by arbitrators really across the country. So is that, in what way is it possible that a deputy, the Bexar County Sheriff's Office, could be reinstated after you terminate?
Well, I suppose the Civil Service Board could rule to overturn it. They have that ability now. It's just I can't think of a time when the current Civil Service Commission has overturned a termination on one of my cases, but it's possible. So that part's not going to change. The part that will change is the ability for an out-of-state arbitrator to come in and make that change. That's no longer part of the process.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Sheriff, I just had a. Oh, sorry.
No,
I
go
just had a quick question. So just for clarification, so this board, will it be privately reviewing such cases of deputies, and also will some of the evidence and things that they receive on the case, could that also be made available to the public at the same time, or how would that work?
I think at least a portion of their deliberations, of their processes, will be recorded and may even be open to the public. I believe that a lot of that's still being decided upon, how that's going to happen. But I know we're going to make as much of it public as we possibly can without violating any privacy rules. I'm more in favor of operating in the light of day to the extent possible. So in other words, if there's something that we're not barred legally from sharing or from opening to the public, I'd say let's open it up and let's let the public have eyes on it. That gives a higher level of transparency. Can't necessarily hurt things. It's public information anyway.
Good afternoon, Sheriff. I had a question about the cab as well. I get the impression from the wording in the document, in the new contract, that the cab won't be able to do an independent investigation on its own, and it won't be able to make like broader policy recommendations. Am I reading that correctly?
And I suppose they can make recommendations, but they won't be able to make those policy changes at will. That's still within my purview. But I certainly wouldn't be opposed to them saying, yeah, we really would like you to have, to review this policy or to take a look at it. I certainly wouldn't object to that. But as far as making policy changes, that's still within our purview.
And the ability to do independent investigations, is that they're not going to take these on as their own? They will see them as the complainant yourself or the responding deputy brings them to them.
Right. They won't have the ability to take on their own investigation. They're hearing and seeing the evidence that's placed before them. Obviously they're going to look at the whole case, but they won't be. They're not an independent investigative body, I guess, so to speak.
Right. Well, and you may have said something about this earlier, but in general, how do you feel about this contract? Did everyone kind of get a piece of what they wanted?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great contract. I think over the course of the contract, obviously we're concentrating a lot on the Citizens Advisory Action Board, which is huge. The arbitration being replaced by an expanded civil service, that's huge. But what I really like, and as far as our recruitment, is something that I'm pretty excited about. Is since I took office, I've been saying I really want to see our deputies get a pay raise. Again, it helps them, provide for their families a little bit better, but also it helps me in that I can cast a wider net and get more qualified applicants in the door. And over the course of this contract, we're looking at about 15% raise, 5% right off the bat, across the board raise in fiscal year 2022, another 5% across the board wage increase, and then 2.5. So that's a total of 15% raise. That's huge. And absolutely, I'm going to be shouting that one from the rooftops, again, for recruitment purposes, hoping to get more qualified folks to apply for the agency. So yes, I'm very happy with the outcomes.
And how does that 15% compare to the last contract? Do you have that on hand?
I don't have offhand what the last one was. I wasn't here when that one was negotiated, but I'll get Johnny to give that to you after this presser, if that's okay.
Thank you.
Okay, sure thing.
Sheriff, can you tell me a little bit more about the Civil Service Commission, the enhanced board? Are they only there to look at decisions that could perhaps be overturned or not, or are they going to see other disciplinary issues as well?
No, just discipline cases that if Jake, I'm not positive I understand your question, but what I think they're just anything that I render discipline on that the respondent deputy disagrees with, then they have they can take it to civil service, and civil service will then hear it, and they may either agree with what I've said, or they may reduce it, or they may change it altogether.
Okay, I see. So they're not going to rule on anything else or have any hand in other sorts of disciplinary issues. This is only, like you've kind of been saying, to replace arbitration when there's a dispute over the discipline that's been handed down.
Right. So there may be a time, let me give you a perfect example. Let's say a deputy comes in and the proposed discipline is a 60-day suspension. And then that deputy and I agree through a process that we, it's pretty common around here, is, well, I don't think a 60 days is I think a 60 days too much for what I did. Sheriff, would you consider reducing it to a 30? And then so that deputy and I may agree upon, okay, let's do a 30-day suspension. That one won't go to civil service because it's mutually agreed upon. Where it would go to the civil service is if I go heavier than what the deputy is comfortable agreeing to there at the table, and then they have the ability to go to the civil service board, and the civil service will hear it, and they may agree with the discipline that I imposed, or they may reduce it.
Got it. Thank you. And so, what are your thoughts on do you know how they came to this 7-member commission? And I understand you get to appoint one person to the commission. What are your thoughts on that?
I still get to appoint who the chairman is, and that's part of what's there now. Is I appoint the chairman of the board. I mean, I'm okay with it. If I'm doing my job, then this civil service board won't have anything to overturn. If I'm right and just in how I impose discipline. I mean, I think that I've got a history of being a strong disciplinarian, but we'll see. We'll see if the civil service board continues to agree with the discipline as I impose. Certainly, I think if they, if it starts to look like they're a little too quote unquote light on discipline, I think they'll have some explaining to do to the public. But in the meantime, I think the public is calling for more stronger discipline than what has been seen in other cities, other counties. So I think that what I've done and what I'm going to continue to do is certainly in line with what the public is asking of us. Again, I don't have any reason to believe that the Civil Service Commission expanding from 3 to 7 is going to create any big hardships on me or on this agency.
Got it. And another question I have is, how many deputies do you currently have on board?
At full strength, we're at about 1,500. I'd have to get you the numbers on vacancies. Is that on here? No, I'd have to get you the numbers on vacancies right now, Jacob. But I haven't looked at a staffing study here in a day or two. But we'll get you those numbers here as soon as the presser's over with.
And do you know this pay raise? Do you know about how much that adds up to as far as cost to the county?
No, sir, I don't. Just that it's going to be about a 15% raise. So if you base that upon about $15,000 that our deputies make, it's pretty simple math to do from there.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir. And then one other pretty interesting point that I'd like to make with regard to the collective bargaining agreement is that there's now a modified hiring process. One of the things that we've seen with regard to new hires into the sheriff's office is we hear a lot, well, gosh, I want to go work patrol. I don't want to work in the jail for 2 years. We've actually removed that 2-year requirement. And so somebody that starts at the jail today could actually turn around, if they already have their peace officer license, they could actually turn around and apply for the law enforcement side of the house tomorrow if they wanted to. Now, they may be standing in line next to somebody that's coming from another agency that's already a peace officer. But the difference is, if you work in the jail, you're going to get up to 3 preference points based upon years that you've been working in the jail. So, for example, somebody that has been working in the Bexar County Jail for 2 years already and is looking to apply to go to the law enforcement side of the house, they're going to have 2 preference points for the 2 years of time that they've spent working in the jail already, up to 3 points. And so I want people to understand that the time that you're putting into the jail is still ultimately helping you, because you may actually, if all things being equal between you and this next other applicant, but you've been working here for 3 years and he or she has not, then you've got a 3 preference points in that test. So I just really want people to understand that you're certainly not wasting your time working in the jail. You're adding to those points, those preference points you're going to get on the process. So again, we think this is going to help us out with regard to recruitment and retention.
Sheriff Amanda Henderson with News 4 and Fox San Antonio. You mentioned you're hoping that this pay raise in the collective bargaining agreement is going to bring in more recruits, which we've seen so many recruiting different ways to bring in people. So how do you expect to get the word out, and how do you hope it brings in more people, and how many people are you guys down right now?
Well, we'd have to get you the numbers of people that were down. I know Johnny's trying to get that information right now. Obviously anything that we can do to try to make somebody's process easier it stands to reason that it's going to help us get more people in. If we can offer higher pay, that's going to help us bring people in. If we can guarantee you that you no longer have to spend 2 years working in the jail before you can cross over to law enforcement side of the house, obviously I think that's going to give us a shot in the arm as far as recruitment goes as well. So I don't know. It'd be hard for me to say, oh, well, this is going to be good for 100 or 200 new applicants. I just know that I just feel that there will be more based upon higher pay and shorter times at working the jail before being allowed to cross over into the law enforcement side.
Speaking of the jail, Sheriff, you've got an overtime request up for Commissioner's Court tomorrow. Sorry if I've already addressed this. I had to step away from it. But if in the documents for that, the county budget analyst, notes that if you're continuing the overtime request at this rate, you're going to reach nearly $14 million in requests for this current fiscal year.
Mm-hmm.
And whereas you only have about, I think it's a little over 8.5, or it's under 8.5 million, a little over 8.25 million available for overtime.
Mm-hmm.
So can you tell us about the continuing problems you face with, jail staffing, and what you're going to try to do to make sure that you're not going so far over budget?
Sure. Well, we're trying to keep up with recruitment. I know that last year we hired probably upwards of 250 people. The year before that, we hired probably pretty close to that. So we're certainly doing our part to hire. But it's with regard to retention that we've continued to see a problem. As you've seen, and there's been articles written on the great resignation that's going on across the country. People are just resigning jobs in droves. That's something that we've seen here too. We've been affected by resignations. People leaving here not just to go to other law enforcement agencies, but people leaving the profession altogether. Add to that we're in the midst of a huge wave of retirements. People that came on in the early 90s that are now reaching retirement age. And that's something that we've seen coming for some time now and knew that it was coming. Well, we're here. And so, some of the people leaving here are not just, well, I've had it with the sheriff's office, I'm leaving. Some of these people have just reached retirement age. So with that being said, that is what's leading in large part to our staffing issues is resignations, retirements. With that being said, add to that COVID. COVID's been just a huge game changer for us. At present, I think we've got close to 200 deputies out with COVID, and that is, we're having to cover a lot of those. And I'm sorry, let me back up a bit. They're not all there. Not all those people have COVID. Some of them have been exposed to COVID, and we're waiting on a negative test to come in. But right now, as it stands, we've got about 200 people out due to COVID issues. And so all of that is what's adding up to our overtime issues. With that being said, the way we reached the number that we're going to be asking for tomorrow is we just basically took what our overtime budget is, we cut it into 4 quarters, and tomorrow we're asking for, I believe, the second quarter of what we have coming to us budget-wise. Now, with that being said, I'm going to try to eat into that overage I would say we're almost certainly going to go over what the budgeted amount is, again, because of COVID. We're going to try to eat into that by continuing to recruit folks and hire folks to the extent that we possibly can. Again, with this pay raise, I'm extremely ecstatic about it because things like that are what's going to help us close that gap sooner rather than later.
And Sheriff, forgive me if I missed this, but where is the pay raise, and and 2,000 lump sum, where's that money coming from?
I think that's just budgeted amounts that the commissioner's court was able to do. I know that there's a bonus that was that coming from COVID dollars that they did that for all employees? ARPA funds. I think one of them was from ARPA funds. That was one that all county employees were going to be getting, and so they were extending that to deputies as well. But that's something that's coming to all county employees. And then the other question you had was, where is the money coming from for the pay raises?
Correct.
I think that's just normal, the part of the normal budgetary process. Obviously the union, the DSABC can ask for whatever it is they think they need as far as pay raises, but the county manager's office, commissioner's court, they need to do the math and figure out, is that something they can afford? So these pay raises came out where the way that was reached was determining what can be afforded through the normal budgetary process. So that's where that is coming from.
Sheriff, I also had a question. We mentioned Commissioner's Court coming up. So on Friday, I saw that there was a letter sent to county commissioners about the body-worn camera policy, and that you're proposing it to be a 30-day release policy with the eventual goal being 10 days. But commissioners back in December said that the policy, and they approved, it was supposed to be a 10-day turnaround time. So I just wanted to kind of ask, what kind of went into that decision, reaching that final, 30-day point, and why that, decision was reached there.
Well, bear in mind, commissioners actually don't set policies for the sheriff's office. We do. Now, with that being said, we're certainly sensitive to what it is that's being asked of us, but at the same time, we've got to be realistic with what's being asked of us, or what we're able to do. I'll be honest with you, I did not agree with the way that 10 days was reached. That day, that last commissioner's court meeting that took place, we knew that they were going to ask us to do a 60-day turnaround, which is in keeping with what the San Antonio Police Department's doing. The day before that, you all attended a press conference where we announced we were going to do a 30-day turnaround, which is in fact less than anybody else in the area. The next day at Commissioner's Court, that number was just arbitrarily reached, and it was 10 days. And I believe that was done capriciously and out of malice by one county commissioner who's no longer on the court. And so I disagreed with it. Now, with that being said, I think that we can attain it if we're able to take advantage of some of the technological upgrades that we're asking to obtain. I think we can get there. For now, though, I'm promising a 30-day turnaround, but if we're able to get some of this technology on our side, some of these upgrades on our side, I'd like to get to the 10 days, again, in keeping with what's being asked of us. But for now, I can guarantee a 30-day turnaround.
Do you think that request and that letter, do you think that, hurts or helps your chances of getting that funding, for the new equipment and the body-worn cameras and the tasers as well? Or what's kind of your take on how this will go from here?
No, I don't think it hurts it. I think we're all on the same page. I think that the plan is to bring that line item back to Commissioner's Court, not tomorrow, but the next session, which I think is February 8th. And so we'll present it then, and I think it'll go our way. I think we'll be able to obtain that upgrade, because the upgrade doesn't just come with the editing software that we're asking for. It's an upgrade, a much needed upgrade to our tasers, which are end of life already. They are beyond life expectancy for a taser, and that's obviously something that a piece of equipment that you want to not malfunction at the time that it's needed. But additionally, we'll be upgrading technology on our body cameras to the next higher up model. These are all upgrades that if we sat and did nothing, let's say we didn't present this to Commissioner's Court next session, as just a matter of our normal upgrade process, we would be getting these upgrades anyway within the course of the next couple of years. But Axon Taser came to us not too long ago, and they said, hey, since you're due for these upgrades anyway, why don't you do them all now? Let's bundle them all now, and it'll save you some money in the process. So that's really what we're doing, is we're just looking to accelerate that replacement process and save ourselves some money in the process.
And I know you mentioned the software would allow for the 10-day turnaround. Since that meeting, is there, maybe any training that could be due for staff to reach that goal, or is it all hinging on the technology that you guys get?
A lot of it's hinging on the technology that we might get. And let me kind of go into why this new technology will make it a lot easier. So, let's say, for argument's sake, an officer-involved shooting occurs. Knock on wood. An officer-involved shooting occurs, and there's 8 deputies there. Well, let's say it's on a public street, and there's cars passing by, and there's civilians walking by. Well, as it stands, license plates of vehicles that pass by and the faces of bystanders aren't public information. So you've got to sit and redact those license plates and faces. You've got to do that times 8. And the way it's done now is it's a very long, tedious process to sit and redact this guy's face on this, and then this other deputy, that same guy's face has to be redacted again and again and again. Just likewise, if a car drives through the frame and that license plate's captured, now you've got to sit and redact that license plate times 8. This new software will allow us to just auto redact all of that, and so it's going to cut down that editing time by a lot. And so, like this here recently, we put out the video of the Damian Daniels shooting. I can tell you, just based upon the software that we were using, that tied up my public information office for the better part of that 2 weeks that it took us to edit that software. It tied up a team of 4 people for that entire time. So, I mean, I can tell you, we really, really need this upgrade to be able to do that 10-day turnaround. I don't think it's going to be an issue, but without that technology, it's certainly going to make it that much harder. Okay. Any other questions on the CBA or the body cameras? Okay. Let me talk about 2 pretty significant cases from over the weekend, and then I'll close. This morning, deputies from the Special Enforcement Group placed a young lady, Christy Lee Arredondo, 35 years of age, under arrest for cruelty to non-livestock animals. This case comes to us at the end of December. One of our investigators from the Special Enforcement Group that specializes in exotic animals and animal cruelty cases was on social media when he happened upon a video clip of 2 ringtail lemurs. It's an exotic animal, a primate, so to speak. It looks kind of like a skinny raccoon. If I've got to be overly simplified, overly simple about it, it looks like a real skinny raccoon, but it's a pretty distinctive animal. He saw this video of these 2 lemurs, which he knows are prohibited animals within the confines of Bexar County. He was able to do some research, and he found that the seller of these ringtail lemurs was actually went by the name Alamo City Frenchy Cartel. They had an address that he was able to find through research, 6519 Ithaca Forest on the northeast side of the city of San Antonio. He enlisted the help of San Antonio Animal Care Services, and they were able to go to the residence. At that residence, he was able to find 1 lemur in a cage still, but then what appeared to be the remains of another lemur that had died, unknown means, and was disposed of by throwing it over the back fence of the residence into an alleyway that ran behind the house. That investigator worked the case over the course of the next several weeks. They did seize the remaining ringtail lemur, which they were able to enlist the help of primarily primates and Animal Care San Antonio Animal Care Services, and they were able to conduct 2 things. They were able to conduct a physical of the living lemur and found that it was in distress. It was not in very good health. It was not very well cared for. And additionally, they were able to perform somewhat of a necropsy on the deceased lemur. Don't believe that they were able to find a cause of death, an exact cause of death on the deceased lemur. However, they were able to determine that the manner in which these primates were kept was cruel and caused undue stress on the animal. Those two, or the remaining animal, was awarded to the sheriff's office by Justice of the Peace. And then Friday, that investigator from the Special Enforcement Unit applied for arrest warrants for Christy Lee Arredondo, and she was, as I mentioned, she was placed under arrest this morning at that residence on Ithaca Forest without incident, and she's going to be facing that charge of cruelty to animals, non-livestock. Any questions? Okay. A los últimos del mes de diciembre, uno de nuestros oficiales de la unidad de esfuerzo especial estaba en las redes sociales cuando él se encontró con un video de dos lémures, un animal exótico que él vio estos videos y él averiguó que el video fue tomado en una casa en Ithaca Forest, en el noreste de la ciudad de San Antonio. Él fue a esa casa y se encontró con uno de los lémures que todavía estaba vivo en esa jaula, pero también se encontró con el cuerpo de otro lémur que fue tirado hacia atrás de la casa. Él aplicó por una orden de reviso para la casa. Él se llevó, trabajando con la agencia de la ciudad de San Antonio, Animal Care Services, que ellos se encargan de los animales. Ellos se llevaron el lémur que sobrevivió esta operación y también se llevaron el cuerpo del lémur que falleció. Un juez de la justicia nos dio el lémur que sobrevivió al incidente y nosotros aplicamos por una orden de arresto por Christy Lee Arredondo, 35 años de edad. Ella fue arrestada esta mañana por las condiciones que ella estaba manteniendo esos animales y que pues se aparenta que las condiciones estas causaron la muerte del lémur que falleció. Ella en estos momentos se enfrenta con ese cargo y la investigación sigue. Any other questions on the lemur case? Okay. Last case I want to talk to y'all about is a case that y'all may have seen it on social media yesterday, or today rather. We made an arrest of a 32-year-old male, Christian Lazo Galindo. This was a joint operation between BCSO, DEA, and the San Antonio Police Department yesterday, Sunday, January 23rd. They developed information on a joint operation, and they seized 7 kilos of methamphetamine, which is, this was done at a McDonald's parking lot in the 3800 block of East Loop 1604 North. So 1604 out near Randolph Air Force Base is where this arrest was made, near IH-10. During the course of the investigation, a cardboard box was located inside of Galindo's vehicle, which contained the 7 kilograms of crystal methamphetamine, and Galindo was placed under arrest without incident. He is going to be facing federal charges in association with that methamphetamine, and at this point, we believe that estimated street value of the methamphetamine is about $350,000 in cash. Obviously, we're happy anytime we can get that much drug off the street, especially one as deadly as methamphetamine is. So within that case and the case that we did on Friday, that's over $500,000 in drugs that were seized. Actually, close to $750,000 in cash or in drugs that was seized within just a couple of days. It tells me we're probably seeing more controlled substances on our streets these days. But again, thanks to the work of the Sheriff's Office and our partners at the DEA, the San Antonio Police Department, and other agencies, federal, state, and local, we're doing what we need to be doing to get these drugs off the street. Any questions?
Sí, Sheriff, habla Jaime Pelufo de Univisión. ¿Puede repetir la última información en español y también explicar por qué lo hace un caso federal?
Sí, el caso de las drogas pasó ayer, el día 23 de enero, el domingo. Nuestros oficiales, en concierto con agentes federales de la DEA, con Departamento de Policía de San Antonio, entre las tres agencias trabajaron juntas para arrestar a Christian Lazo Galindo, 32 años de edad, con 7 kilos de metanfetamina. El valor de las drogas está más que $35,000, $350,000, 350,000, $350,000 el valor de las drogas. Pero la razón que el sospechoso se enfrenta con cargos federales es por la tanta droga que había. En cada tipo de droga hay no sé cómo se dice en español, pero en inglés se dice threshold, donde si las drogas son más que esta cantidad, entonces eso va a llegar al punto federal. Y en este caso, las drogas estas siendo tantas, por esa cantidad de drogas, eso quiere decir que son cargos federales que se va a enfrentar este sospechoso.
¿Y hay algún vínculo con carteles de la droga mexicano?
Es posible. Ahorita es muy temprano para decir de dónde vinieron estas drogas, pero sí sé que en estos casos muchas veces el arresto nomás es donde empieza la investigación. Entonces ya en las semanas, los meses que entran, ojalá y nosotros nos vayamos a dar cuenta de dónde vinieron estas drogas y a quién pertenecen. Okay, are there any other questions on any of the topics that we covered today?
Sheriff, a little bit more of a broader question, but it seems to have been a busy year so far, you guys, especially when it comes to shootings and homicides. Do you know if those numbers have been up this January compared to last?
You know, I'd have to look at a month-by-month comparison. I mean, anecdotally speaking, it has been a pretty busy month or start to this year. We've handled a couple of shootings that have occurred that thankfully we haven't had as many people hurt as what could have been, but we have been seeing it. Just anecdotally speaking, just me off the top of my head, it does seem like we're seeing an uptick in violent crimes yet again.
Is there any way to possibly get numbers on that?
Sure, Johnny can get those to you. Okay. Well, that does it for this briefing. I appreciate you all joining up with us, and I appreciate you all being patient with me about to lose my voice and with our technical issues that we had at the beginning. But I really appreciate it. If there's any other questions, y'all can contact our public information office for further details. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Be safe.